Edgar Allan Poe, A Legacy of Complexity. I knew when I started this quarter and read about this project that I would want to do my presentation on Edgar Allan Poe. I read many of his works before, and even if I hadn't gotten him on this project, honestly, I would have read more of his works anyway. This quarter definitely relit my flame, I suppose, for reading short stories, and Edgar Allan Poe in particular. I discovered a lot about him and how his works were affected by his life. The facts on Edgar Allan Poe include the fact that he was born on January 19th, 1809 in Boston. He died just a few decades later on October 7th, 1849 in Baltimore. It's well documented both that, by today's standards at least, he was definitely an alcoholic, and that he had a contentious relationship with his foster father, John Allan. He was with a foster father because his parents both died when he was very young. He ended up marrying a woman named Virginia, who was his first cousin. I'm supposing it was legal back then, but she preceded him in death by just a couple of years in 1847. One thing I did not know about Edgar Allan Poe previously is that he had gotten himself kicked out of West Point Academy. His works are varied, to say the least. He did poetry, he did stories, and all of them are incredibly well written, in my opinion. He had a way with words that it stands the test of time, honestly. His early works include a poem that I had not read before, O Tempora O Mors. Sorry about that. It was from 1825, and a line that really caught my attention from it, and that I think foreshadows some of Edgar Allan Poe's later works. And as for times, although 'tis said by many, the good old times were far the worst of any. And he did not have a good life, so I don't know that he had good old times, to be perfectly honest. He did a lot of poetry before any of his short stories were published. Now, I don't know whether or not he wrote short stories while he was writing the poetry, but the poetry does precede any publication of his short stories by many years. One of his earlier tales was called Loss of Breath from 1832. And a line that I really liked in that again highlights Poe's work: the most notorious ill fortune must in the end yield to the untiring courage of philosophy, as the most stubborn city to the ceaseless vigilance of an enemy. Edgar Allan Poe wrote a lot about struggles. He wrote a lot about difficult things. His subject matter was not always what was considered appropriate for the times in which he wrote them. We get some of his later works. Obviously, he wrote a lot of poems. He did, and it was really fun going through them. I picked one that, again, I hadn't read before, or I hadn't heard of, called For Annie from 1849, so not too terribly long before his death. The moaning and groaning, the sighing and sobbing are quieted now, with that horrible throbbing at heart. Oh, that horrible throbbing. Again, he definitely wrote some works and some pieces that weren't happy, which, again, is quite the reflection on his life. I have read The Cask of Amontillado before. I don't remember what year, but it was sometime in middle school, I believe, and it stuck with me because who would write something like that but Edgar Allan Poe? A line from it that definitely, again, drives the point home that he was a messed up individual. A succession of loud and shrill screams, bursting suddenly from the throat of the chained form, seemed to thrust me violently back. For a brief moment I hesitated. I trembled. Edgar Allan Poe was basically made for the movies. It's kind of a pity that he didn't live to see any of this. A lot of his works have been translated in some form or another into movies. The ones I've seen are not necessarily entirely accurate going by the pieces. But with short stories, you're going to have to add more detail. You're going to want to make it more audience friendly. And this is a trailer from The Raven, which was one of my favorite pieces by Edgar Allan Poe. While the movie looks quite a bit hokey, I do think that it encompasses the spirit of Edgar Allan Poe. He was definitely very out there.
I made up my mind to take the life of the old man
and learning his works
for an eye level.
Being able to recite them.
I made up my mind to take the life of the old man and win myself for an eye level.
That piece, of course, came from The Telltale Heart, where Edgar Allan Poe, as we read in this quarter, basically had a character kill a man because the eye pissed him off. Here's my works cited page for you to see. Of course, special thanks to my absolutely gorgeous and beautiful niece, Sophia, for cooperating so well in recording that piece. That is the end of my presentation. I hope you enjoy watching it, and I have enjoyed this entire quarter, so thank you very much.